Okay, hello again. You made it to episode 4. Um, in case this is the first video you clicked on, what we're doing is I have a ton of synthesizers, and I've just been thinking about what the best era is. So I kind of cut it down to 6 different eras. And we're on episode 4 here. Episode 1 was basically your monos and duophonic synths. Episode 2 was kind of the rise of the analog polys. And then episode 3 was sort of the death of analog. DX7 came and stuff. And now here we are at episode 4. We're covering 1987 to 1994. And yeah. Basically, analog is totally dead. Everything is digital, and so there's pros and cons. Like on one hand, yeah, it's really sad that analog stuff is gone, but also most of that last batch are pretty much just out of ideas, kind of recycling the same stuff over and over. So this, at least, we have we have a lot of fresh ideas coming on. You also have a lot of really mediocre romplers, general MIDI kind of crap going on. So where to start? I don't think about these videos before I hit record. I just go, oh, I got this one morning. I better jump at it. I'm also currently waiting for a pallet of vinyl to show up. So, anyways, well, back here I got my Ensoniq SQ80. This came out in 1988. Digital oscillators, but analog filters. There's an 8-track sequencer in it. Totally multi-timbral. With the 8-track sequencer, like each track could be a different sound from internal, from the SQ80, or it could be through MIDI, any MIDI channel for any track, or it could be both. So, I mean, this right here I've been using this as master keyboard, master sequencer for like 25 years or something. Really easy to use sequencer, really easy to program too. If you look at the recent Hydra synth, their whole front panel system is basically taken from the SQ80, which makes it all real simple. The sequencer is really easy to use. All the stuff like quantize and all the stuff that you'd want to use. Yeah, great synthesizer. Polyphon or poly aftertouch on the keyboard. So yeah, I have stuff like that. A lot more FM stuff, like Korg had some real cheapo FM synths, like the DS8, that I used on a bunch of albums, even though it was the cheapest synth that I owned. I think it ended up on more of my albums than anything else for whatever reason. I did finally sell it. So yeah, you got stuff like that. Workstations was the big thing happening now. So yeah, digital stuff and these massive workstations where you could make full songs with a keyboard, like the SQ80 here. You have some big, huge, like classic digital synths, like the D50. I think came out in 87 or 88 or something like that. I do not have one of those. I've got a Yamaha SY77 over there. Another, it's basically a DX7, which is why I don't own a DX7, but way better. It's basically, so FM synthesizers, if you're not familiar, is totally different synthesis type that's all based on sine waves and different sine waves doing different things to different sine waves. You got your modulators and your carriers, but it's all sine waves. And what the SY77 did was it does everything a DX7 can do, but also it has all the sampled waveforms, and you can either like stack those on top of the FM synth, or you can use them within the FM algorithms instead of sine waves. So really powerful, most annoying and not fun synthesizer to program I've maybe ever owned. I basically don't do anything with it. I even bought a big programmer for it. Didn't help. I mean, it's an annoying synth to use. Total opposite of the SQ80, which I love, and it could pull a sound out of my ass at any minute, and it doesn't take long. Hi, here comes my cat. He gets confused when I talk to myself in this room. Comes and checks in on me. Another thing you'll notice, well, you won't because you can't really see them all. I'll throw a picture up or something, is these synthesizers are ugly. This era is so ugly. Basically, controls have been wiped out. It's just black panel, up and down, arrows, menu diving. That took over, unfortunately. So you got a lot more power, but it's a lot more annoying. I feel like it became a real, like, much more everything I say sounds mean. It was much more nerdy. Like you watch these a lot of these synthesizers of this time came with like VHS tapes or DVDs to like help you program, and it was always some like ponytail like like studio like nerd guy, and like it's just not fun at all, and it sounds like you're in a classroom in a science class or something, talking to your annoying teacher that really thinks he's cool. But anyways, so yeah, you got a lot of samplers going on. Ensoniq had their EPS 16 plus, the ASR 10. Great samplers. The ASR 10 is still a classic. And if you got a, old sampler that people are still using, they really made it right. I would say that in this era, Ensoniq is the absolute king of this era. Like, it's not a brand that gets the recognition like Roland or Yamaha or anything, but this 87 to 94, I mean, you got the SQ80, one of my all-time favorites. They did the VFX, also great, which turned into the SD1, which I have over there, also amazing. 16-track sequencer. That one is fully digital, but another great synthesizer. Like I said, the EPS, the ASR10, the TS10 and TS12, that whole line of Ensoniqs is some of the best stuff you can get in this era. Another cool one I have from this time is the Wavestation, also in the opposite corner that you can't see. I thought about bringing them all over here, and I was like, I don't want to unhook stuff. So, sorry. I even thought about setting stuff up in a different room to give you guys something different to look at, but no, it's annoying unplugging cables and setting everything back up. So tough. You can look at this one. This is the Roland JD800, and it is wonderful. It's one of my favorite Rolands, and one of the most important things here is they covered the panel with sliders, which no one was doing at the time. And they have like VSTs of this. People are like, oh, it's totally digital. So what's the difference? And they have the Roland Boutique, this little tiny thing. And people think since it's not analog that that's good enough and you might as well just buy those. But you're totally missing the point that the build is just as important. The build and the size. These full-size sliders, this thing feels wonderful. It's big and heavy, and if you've played the Boutique, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like there's nothing fun about playing that. There's nothing fun about playing the like software version. There's not. This is. I don't know what to tell you. You've probably heard this one is plagued with problems. The red glue of death. I bought this from a guy, claimed it was like never left his home studio and, blah, 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 perfect condition. And I got there and right away noticed, well, that's funny because this whole panel is warped. So it was clearly sitting in something hot, which means the red glue that holds the weights and the keys, these are all weighted keys, melts. The glue sucked, and if it got hot at all, the glue started to melt, and then it drips on other stuff. So like a bunch of keys were glued together, wouldn't move. Sometimes the glue gets on the circuit boards. So that's the problem that most people talk about. I had to take the whole thing apart. I had to soak all the keys in some harsh like Drano chemicals or something to get it off. I ended up just chucking all the weights. I don't really care about weighted keyboards. I'm not a piano guy. But another huge problem with this synth that you don't hear as much is there's a really dainty ribbon controller that goes from the circuit board right around here to the key bed. Yeah, he knows. And the connectors get screwed up a little bit. Wow, that was cool. And then a whole block of keys will stop working. Because the internet doesn't talk about that as much, I did not know that when I took it apart to fix the keys. So while I was fixing the keys, I think I let that ribbon cable dangle a little bit, and that ended up screwing it up. So I put it back together, and then a bunch of keys weren't working. So I currently have a big, like, steel clamp inside of this thing, just clamping that ribbon down, and everything currently works. It's a really cool synthesizer. The low end on this thing, like I have a hard time using this in recordings or even just setting the levels to make this stupid video, because like it will just blow everything out. It is and then you turn it down and you're like, oh, that's okay, and it's still like the low end, especially in case you haven't noticed, all my sounds have to have tons of moving around and sweeping and shit like that. So yeah, it's just constantly clipping stuff. I actually haven't used this in a recording, probably because of that. But ooh, it sounds nice to just mess around with. These are all my patches. I don't like presets. You can find videos of like the generic presets that people love and stuff. I generally just erase those. I think this one started as a preset and I just made it uglier. It's like a distorted harmonic guitar kind of thing. Really, really different though. So yeah, this is one of the coolest synths of this time. It used the the current technology of all like this digital stuff, multiple layers, very much like the Ensonics, or it's based on 4 layers of sound, and just like all this stuff you could do, but with the added sliders, it makes this one of the funnest synthesizers to play and program. Whereas the Wavestation, really cool, really different. The whole start of the wave sequencing thing, which you're probably more familiar with the wave state. But man, programming that is just boring. It is just so boring. Which is why I bought that. I've had it listed for sale, and then finally, to make sure that the thing was working right, I swapped out the battery and programmed a few of my own sounds to make sure everything was working, and then I kind of got way more into it. I mean, it was annoying to program, but once you, again, get rid of the presets and do something that you like, really saw the potential in it. So it's back in the keep pile. I'm really not focused in this video in case you can't tell. Anyways, okay. So yeah, we went from kind of crappy analog to all digital, but multi-timbral, like multi-track sequencers. A lot of these have like drum sounds built in them. So kind of like just big workhorse, great synthesizers. You have a lot of, like I said, bad romplers, more like Ensonic had their like SQ1 and SQ2, not to be confused with the SQ80, not related at all. I think they're really bad as like the home market synths of Ensonic. The other like SY synths, like there's the 22, which uses like the vector synthesis joystick thing, like the Wavestation has, that started with like the Prophet VS. That's more like Dave Smith invention stuff. They're just really boring. There's like Roland had a bunch of just romplers. I think it was like the JV or JW series. So that's the weak part, like, and they all look the same as the thing. They're all just like black, plain fucking keyboards. So you don't, unless you like really know your shit. Like if you walked into a store and were like, "Oh, old keyboard, it's super cheap. Maybe I'll buy it." It could be something cool, or it could be some General MIDI fucking sterile. So there's this like MIDI is great, but then they wanted how I use MIDI and how apparently you're supposed to use MIDI is very different. Apparently they wanted everyone to use this like specific MIDI channels for specific instruments. So if like this guy over here had like a MIDI sequence, you could send it somewhere else and it still would make sense. But like I don't work with other people. I don't want to work with other people. So you got that going on. And then there's this whole general MIDI sound bank or something, like general MIDI sound set. And it's terrible. It's terrible stuff. It's terrible fake horns and bad drums and just the sort of keyboard that you find in your parents' basement when you're a kid and you laugh at how bad it is. That shit. Very opposite of the JD800, the Wavestation, the SQ80. Like the SY77 has a ton of that, like in the presets. Every keyboard's going to have that crap in the presets, but this stuff is actually powerful and does a lot, along with all those Insonics I talked about. And then finally, at the end of this era, around 1993, Novation made the Bass Station, which I think was the first actual real analog synth since our last episode, since like 86-ish. There might have been one or two other random things in there, so don't get all uppity on me about that. But generally speaking, the Bass Station came and was like, remember how cool analog stuff is? And there's also a couple VA synths, virtual analog synths, which are digital synths, but they're based on how analog synths used to work with knobs for the filters and, you know, your basic wave shapes instead of like all these sampled complex wave shapes. And that is where they start becoming fun again. That'll be our next episode, the kind of return of, there's really a ton of like virtual analog synths that come out and kind of remind everyone of the cooler eras of synthesizers. But yeah, so I'll just toss up some Insonic and some Roland and some samples here for you guys to get a sound or get a listen to that. I'm just kind of blabbing. Yeah. So see you then. I don't know when I'm going to make that. I think I'll probably throw up the next video I'll throw up. Will probably just be a little quick like teaser demo thing of this record that's coming. Got a new Residence album coming out that I worked on. It's not a reissue. It's a live album that hasn't been released. So yeah, that's coming quick. That's all.